Boris Johnson is on a tour to win support for his do-or-die Brexit pledge. The newly elected UK Prime Minister has visited South Wales, telling farmers they will get a better deal after Brexit. As for whether the UK will leave the EU with or without an agreement, Johnson says the ball is in Brussels' court.
What we will do is get ready for a deal. Our friends and partners have the opportunity to do a deal. It's up to them. But we will also, of course, get ready for the alternative.
In Scotland, his charm offensive didn't catch on. Unlike Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to stay in the EU. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says Johnson's Brexit plan will hurt the economy. She's also warned there could be a second referendum to break away from the UK.
I thought it was for the people of Scotland, not him or I, for that matter, to decide our future, but for the people of Scotland to decide our future, that the change of circumstances as a result of Brexit makes it necessary for Scotland now to consider whether it wants to become an independent country.
Meanwhile, Northern Ireland's largest nationalist party, Sinn Féin, says Dublin should prepare for Irish unification, an issue the Republic of Ireland says could arise in the case of a disorderly Brexit. The so-called Irish backstop, designed to prevent a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, is one of the most hotly contested elements of the divorce agreement. Dublin says the backstop is essential, while Johnson wants it gone.
We have to have that backstop out of the deal. We cannot go on with the withdrawal agreement as it currently is, and everybody understands that it's dead.
Differences over Brexit and the rising risk of no deal are straining the bonds that tie the UK, as well as the economy. The British pound has lost 2.4% in value since Johnson took office, and is heading towards its worst performance since the Brexit vote 3 years ago. While Johnson has promised to reunite the country, his brinkmanship with the EU could risk breaking up one union in pursuit of ending another. Sibel Karkus, TRT World.
Well, let's go to Iain Begg now in London. He's a Professorial Research Fellow at the European Institute at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Welcome back to Money Talks, Iain. Now, Boris Johnson, as we heard, says whether the UK leaves the EU with or without a deal is entirely up to the European Union itself. Do you agree with that statement?
No, it's nonsense, because the European Union has already offered a withdrawal deal, the one that was rejected when Theresa May negotiated it. And what Boris Johnson is saying is a decision he's made, not a unilateral position that has to be adopted irrespective of what the EU wants. And what's more, the British Parliament is very likely to oppose going out with no deal. I don't know how they'll do it, but the British system is flexible enough to find a way. So I think that Boris Johnson has given himself an almost impossible target to reach.
And there's also there's been speculation that perhaps UK parliamentarians may try to prevent Boris Johnson from securing that no-deal Brexit, but also in the reverse, that Boris Johnson himself might somehow game the system to make sure that MPs can't vote against a no-deal. Do you think that's possible?
Well, he'll try, and the extreme version of that is for him to do what's called proroguing Parliament, just closing it down and seeking a new Parliament. But that would be regarded by many as a constitutional outrage of the kind that the British routinely condemn in other countries. So I think it's quite unlikely that that extreme measure will be taken. Instead, what's going to happen is there will be either some form of negotiation on the one hand between the British government and the British Parliament, and on the other hand by the British government and the European Union, to see if there's some sort of middle way that can be reached. If not, then something more dramatic might happen, either a general election in this country or resort to a further referendum as a way of shifting the chairs a bit to enable a deal or some other solution to be found.
Now, Boris Johnson has identified the Irish backstop in particular as one of the elements that needs to go from this withdrawal agreement. The EU has so far refused to budge on that. Do you foresee Brussels perhaps reopening that aspect of the negotiations?
It's not impossible, they may find a formula to do with what's called the future relationship as opposed to the withdrawal deal. Just to remind your viewers, the withdrawal deal was mainly about three things: money, each other's citizens' rights, and securing the absence of a border in Northern Ireland. Now, the border in Northern Ireland really has to do with the future relationship between the EU and the UK. If Britain is outside the customs union, then in theory there ought to be a customs check on the border between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, which is the Northern Ireland border. And that's the dilemma that's pervaded this from the start. Whether some formula can be found to say, well, we'll look at this in detail and maybe postpone the backstop for a while, or some other formula, is one way out of this. But otherwise, it's almost an intractable problem.
That's right. And we're also hearing calls from some in Northern Ireland for Dublin to prepare for possible Irish reunification, a hugely sensitive issue, as we know. Does this threaten to become a more serious issue as Brexit drags on?
That would be a very, very difficult thing to try to engineer, because the reason there is a Northern Ireland in the first place is that the Protestant minority in what was then Ireland objected to being forced into a Catholic Ireland. And that Protestant minority is still there in Northern Ireland, where it's the majority. If there were an attempt to try to merge the two bits of Ireland, you could expect a return to quite severe violence in Northern Ireland. So for that reason alone, I don't think it's going to happen.
No, that's right. Okay, Iain Begg, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you again for your time from London.